That is the most beautiful girl I've ever seen in my entire life.
And the first thing he said to me was, whoa, these suspenders are so tight. I'm not interested. I'm not looking for anyone to date. He was in Alaska. I was in Virginia. Oh my word, there he is. I felt the Holy Spirit like just tell me that you're gonna be my husband. His forearms are so big. Great, we're gonna be across the country. Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to our channel. Today's video we're going to be doing a how we met video. We're basically just going to be talking about first time meeting each other.
We've been married a little over 2 years now. We just thought it'd be fun to share the story with you guys, so let's get into it.
I guess we'll just start by saying like kind of what phase of life we were in right before we met, kind of where we were at, what we were doing. We both had just turned 18, so I was 18. We met in October of 2018, so around that time I was working several jobs. I had just graduated high school. I just had my graduation like in May. It's so weird when you stare at me. I was working at a restaurant pretty much full-time Monday through Saturday, 8 to 5. I was involved in my youth group a lot. I was very involved in dance. I was kind of just ending that season. Pretty much just hanging out with friends. I was living in Virginia. I was also looking to get into nursing school. So I was taking a bunch of college courses, dual enrollment. I was taking anatomy and physiology, statistics, physics, and things like that. So I was really, really busy, pretty much just in school and working full-time.
I had just graduated high school as well in May. We both graduated 2018. I had spent the entire summer working out in the bush in Alaska, a little village called Noatak. We were building a house for a couple of clients at the time. I had been up there from June or July, all the way until October 11th. Flew down for my brother's wedding. When we got into town, started getting ready for the wedding and bought a vehicle because I hadn't had one. I sold mine to go up to Alaska.
I should also mention I wasn't dating anyone at the time, and I don't think you were.
I was not dating anybody at the time.
But I also got an invitation to that wedding. So one of my best friends was getting married and she had asked me to be a bridesmaid for that wedding in October. His brother was the one getting married for his perspective. So yeah, we were just working and he was in Alaska, I was in Virginia, and he flew into the wedding, pretty much met at this wedding. I was driving up to the wedding rehearsal. It was about an hour away from where I lived. I had taken the day off of work and we were gonna have like a bridal luncheon. We were gonna get our nails done, all of the bridesmaids and everything. I got to meet all the bridesmaids, future sister-in-laws.
Your future sister-in-laws.
Yeah, but I didn't know that, so I'm just speaking from like that perspective. But yes, my future sister-in-laws. At that point we had lunch and then we drove to the church to have like the rehearsal. And I remember like pulling in, I was trying to find everybody. There was so many people there. And I remember my friend hadn't seen her fiance, which is your brother, in a really long time. So they were so excited to see each other. She was kind of just talking to him. I didn't know anyone there. Like she's the only one that I knew. So I was kind of just like standing there. And I do remember you walking up and we were all in a circle and it was you and all of your brothers, but I didn't know who they were. So, and my friend like forgot to introduce us to anyone. We were just awkwardly standing there. As soon as I saw him, I felt the Holy Spirit like just tell me that you're gonna be my husband, which was really weird. I talk about that in another video. I had prayed about that. I talked about my testimony in my last video on my channel. That was something that I've been praying for pretty much my whole life. So as soon as I saw him, I didn't know his name, I didn't know who he was, but I knew that like he was gonna be my boyfriend later. That was so weird, and all I remembered after that was just like walking into the church and thinking about it.
So like I said, I was in work mode and just kind of checking things off the list, you know, going to work. I worked for my dad at the time for his construction company. I began working for him down here in Virginia. When I got home, bought a vehicle, just kind of checking things off the list. Was pretty much just going through the motions even up until, you know, the day before the wedding. That all came screeching to a major halt. October 19th, 2018, we pulled into the church and I got out of the car and there was a blue BMW parked just a few spots away. The driver of that car got out and she started walking into the church. And I just remember saying to myself, that is the most beautiful girl I've ever seen in my entire life.
You're so sweet.
And I didn't have any premonitions, you know, visions or anything like that about her being my future wife. I was not mature enough in the Lord to experience that kind of a thing, but I did feel, you know, a prod, a little poke saying, you know, that's the direction. And I didn't know it at the time. You know, I probably just figured that it was my own desire to get to know this person who blew my mind away. I do believe it was the Holy Spirit telling me, and I'm just glad that I listened. That was when I first saw her.
Also, from my perspective, I remember we had gone inside and everything. I was up on the stage at one point. Like, I had already walked down the aisle and I was waiting for you know, everybody else. And Grant was the best man, so he was walking down the aisle. And I remember standing up on the stage, I had like a vision of him walking down the aisle, and it was me next to him instead of the girl he was with, which I think it was your sister. They were walking down the aisle, and I just saw, like, it wasn't like I was just daydreaming. It was like my first vision. I hadn't ever had one before. It was so weird because I was in a wedding dress. The way I saw him was like a lot older. Like, I saw him with long hair and no glasses, which at this point he was wearing glasses.
That's true. Yeah.
And I just remember I was like, wait, is that him? Like, and I just knew that it was, but he looked so different in the vision. And then that was it. Like, it lasted for like a few seconds, and I just saw it. I was like, whoa, like, this is so crazy. So the whole rest of the night, I was just thinking, is he gonna come up and talk to me, or is this gonna be like 5 years down the road that we start talking? I didn't know what it looked like or how it was gonna play out. I just knew that that was gonna be my husband, which is so weird. And I do remember also the last minute, like when we were about to leave to go to the restaurant, I remember you coming up and sitting on the pew next to me, and the first thing you said to me was, whoa, these suspenders are so tight.
Really? I do not remember that at all.
These are like so tight. And you just like leaned back on the thing, and I was like, hi.
That is funny. I must have been trying to like play it cool or something.
It was so funny. And then you're like, I'm Grant, by the way.
Cringy.
And I was like, oh, I'm Courtney. And then that was it. Someone came up to me. Yeah, that was the first thing he said to me. Then we drove to the rehearsal dinner, and I do remember I had sat next to his sister, because again, I didn't know anyone there. The bride, my friend, was like busy obviously with her fiance and everyone there, and they were like at the other side of the table. So I really didn't know anyone, but his sister was really nice to me. Yeah, we got along really well. And so I was like just kind of I was just following her around like pretty much the whole night we were hanging out. So I just automatically thought I would sit wherever she did. She sat all the way in the corner, and then I followed in next to her. I looked behind me, and like it was you walking in behind me, and we sat down, like me and his sister, and then there was one chair next to me, and Grant started like to sit down, but he left a gap like right at the extra seat and sat at the one next to it. His sister looked at him. She was like, what are you doing? Like, you can sit next to her. And I was like, yeah, you can sit here.
It was even worse than that. There was a person coming towards us, and my sister said, dude, scoot down.
Oh.
And I scooted the other way. I scooted
like,
the other way. I didn't know what she meant. I was so nervous.
So
I was like embarrassed. So I scoot away. Now there's two chairs between us.
I'm like, man, is there something wrong with me?
And
like,
meanwhile, I'm just embarrassed. You know, I'm trying to give her a little space and not crowd her, because there's like a table in front of us. It's like a bench style seat, I think.
You all had,
and then
it was
wall
like
behind
single
us.
file line. Like it wasn't like
tight.
A restaurant where like it's kind of like you all had to squish in. So that's why it was even more awkward that he left two seats next to me. Because then everyone's like, dude, like, you know, make some room.
But eventually, I scooted over two seats, and we ended up right next to each other, about as close as we are now. I mean, it was pretty tight.
And we really didn't talk.
We didn't talk much. No, I was just so embarrassed. Like, at that point in my life, I was really not comfortable around girls. I mean, I was 18. I was just like nervous and shy. I'd never had a girlfriend before, so I was just really nervous, didn't really know what to say. Not a super smooth talker. I didn't think so.
Surprisingly, I wasn't that nervous, and I think it's because I was just like in disbelief. I was like, what in the world? Like, I already knew we were gonna be boyfriend girlfriend. I just assumed, you know, like it was such a weird thing for me. I was still just in shock from everything that I had known. Obviously I wasn't gonna tell anyone. I was just in shock. So I was like, he's sitting next to me, he talked to me already, and there was so many people in that bridal party. I didn't talk to any other groomsmen. It wasn't like we were just gonna automatically talk. So it was weird that we like sat next to each other. I do remember he went to grab the sweet tea. I remember he reached over to grab the sweet tea to like pass it to someone, and I was like freaking out about how big his forearms were. He grabbed it by the lid and like moved it. Yes. And I was like, oh my word, like his forearms are so big. And then I remember I had a camo phone case on my phone, and the only thing you said to me like pretty much the whole night was, you were like, oh, I like your phone case. And I was like, oh, thanks. It was camo. But that was like literally the only thing that night.
And we were laughing at the people on the other side of the chair, the other side of the table from us.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like it, you know, it just like clicked or anything, and we just started talking about everything under the sun. I
also had just found out at that point that you were the brother. It was funny because I didn't know who he was, because the night before I was spending the night with my friend who was getting married. It was just me and her mom came in, and she was like, oh, you know, the groom's brother, like he has a brother and his name is Grant. You guys would be so great together. And I was like, whatever, like I'm not interested. I'm not looking for anyone to date. And I remember that she said the groom's brother's name is Grant, and he's, you know, really nice and everything. It was kind of at that point I remembered that, and I was like, oh, this is like his brother. Like, this is who she was telling me about. And then we went home, and that's all I thought about. Like, we went back to the lake house. Yeah, basically the whole rest of the night I rode with his sister, and we rode back to the lake house, and that was like all I was thinking of. And then at this point, when I found out that like his sister was his sister, I was like waiting for any point for her to like mention him or talk about him.
I'm sorry, baby. I didn't realize you were sitting on your feet.
I have to with this dip.
I thought that's where I sit. That's why it's a dip.
Oh, this is the only way I'll be in frame.
Okay, so at this point in my life, after the wedding rehearsal and the rehearsal dinner, I went home. It was just a regular night. We weren't doing anything because we had had the bachelor party a couple nights before. I am just like full on doom scrolling through Instagram looking for this person. Cannot find her anywhere. I knew her last name, her first name. But
I spelled it different on my Instagram.
I knew that she would be following my sister-in-law, all this stuff. I could not find her. So I finally had to text my sister-in-law. Or my soon-to-be sister-in-law at the time. And I said, hey, who is this person? Like where, like, what's her name? What's her last name? What's she about? What's her Instagram? Couldn't find it. So I had to ask her, and I figured she would probably tell you something, but I guess she didn't, so kudos to her.
Yeah, she was so involved in, I think, just getting married. Like, she was not even thinking about that.
I just remember she answered the text with, like, 3 laughing faces, and then she said her Instagram handle is, you know, whatever it was at the time. She's so sweet, so beautiful, loves the Lord so much.
Oh, that's sweet.
And I was like, perfect. What more can we ask for?
Baby, what more? You're so funny.
I mean, that's what I thought. Yeah, I mean, I knew you were beautiful.
You're so
She didn't have to say that. And she said you were sweet. You know, usually beautiful people are stuck up, and you are not. So that's what I'm looking for. And love the Lord, so.
Let's buy the ring.
Yeah. You probably wish it was that way.
I did. That's another story though.
Yeah, that's another video.
And that was pretty much it. And then we get to the wedding day. And again, all I was doing was like thinking about him. I also didn't know, like I had found out at this point that they were all from Alaska, lived there. I didn't even know if he lived in Virginia at this point. So I'm like, great, we're gonna be across the country. If we even start dating, it's probably gonna be years down the road. And I also lived an hour away from where they all were. The wedding was there, and all of their family that lived in Virginia was from this area too, which is already such a drive for me. And I knew this was kind of like the last time we were really gonna talk for a while, because the bride and groom, my friend, like they were going back to Alaska. Like there was just no chance that we were gonna see each other. So I was already like, how is this gonna play out? I was just so curious.